everybody, and welcome to the next series in Women in Leadership for the SPASA program for, the leadership program for SPASA Women in Leadership. Bad start to the day, a bit like I did last time. I wasn't quite sure what was happening with our technology, but today we think we've got everything ironed out. Anyway, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you, particularly those of you who are joining us for the second time, and for anybody who is new. This program, series of programs and webinars, has been designed to help you with some of the current situations around what it takes to be a woman in leadership. In fact, anybody who's in a leadership position. When we start looking at our leadership and what's important, today we're going to look at how we create the conditions for success and all of the aspects that lie behind that. In our last session, we discussed your role as a leader, and there was a lot of emphasis around the engagement and performance aspect of that. I hope you've received the article Performance and Engagement Strategies. At our first session, I thought it would help to reinforce some of those learnings. So I put together this article with some revision around what we actually covered in the session, and also how we can identify quite easily when somebody is engaged, when they are in the burnout phase, whether they're playing or whether they're in the rusty area. So this is accompanied with some very simple techniques and tips around how to identify those levels of engagement and what we need to do as a leader when we discover that there isn't any engagement there. In our next webinar, scheduled for the 25th of June, we'll be delving into these strategies a lot more, and that will be within the context of your personal leadership style and how those leadership styles need to vary, and we need to be versatile and be able to adapt to the particular situations. We'll also look at some of the leadership behaviours that work and some of the ones that perhaps don't work. Don't forget at any time in the sessions, if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer those. And if we don't get an opportunity during the session, then or you think of questions after the session, please don't hesitate to let me know, because that's what we're here for, so that we can share some of our ideas, some of the challenges that we face as a leader, and to get the best practices in leadership across Australia and globally. In today's session, what I would like to look at is understanding the business success factors and what it is we're in business for, and how that is really important to get the foundations right. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is getting the balance of leading and managing. And if you can remember from last session, that's all about the doing and the being. We'll then look at the conditions that we should be focusing on and why they matter so much. And also, to top it off, we'll look at some of the behaviours that erode our success. And this is fundamentally the pivotal point around everything that we're building when we are putting these conditions for success into place. Also, in preparation for today, I prepared a business health checklist. We'll be using this to identify if there are any behaviours present which affect the success of your business. My understanding is that this was sent out with your invitation to attend today's webinar. But if you haven't received the checklist at this point in time, don't worry, it will be made available to you at the end of the session. All of this is going to be within the context of looking at the impact of disengagement. And fundamentally, we foster a dysfunctional workplace if we have disengagement. So when considering the conditions for success, we need to think of it as taking a health check. If we compare the process of buying a new car, maybe it's the dream car that we've wanted to purchase. When we buy a car, it's a big capital outlay. It's also an emotional investment as well. So we look after it, we maintain it, we service it regularly. We don't want it to break down, and we'd like it to maintain its value. Similarly, if we get sick, there are similar implications. We go and see a doctor or a specialist to find out what's wrong and get treatment to make us better. In essence, then, it really makes sense for us to give our business a health check. After all, we're very heavily invested in this, both emotionally and financially as well. At first, I'd like to do a very quick recap about the leadership competence. The doing side of leading is the managing. That's where we look after our systems, our IT, OH&S, processes, etc. The more challenging aspect of leadership competence is the being side, or leading people. Because if we get this wrong, we lose engagement. And that in turn creates opportunities for dysfunctional behaviours to become apparent and for a dysfunctional culture to form. We can invest a great deal of time in making sure we've got the best IT, a really substantial customer base, a skilled staff, all the conditions that we think we need for success, and yet we still can't outperform our competition. We often think our only job about getting more profit, sustainability, great customers, and market share. All the fiscal aspects of the business, and yes, they're all absolutely vital for the health of the business. However, when we're conducting a health check of the business, we need to look at both the doing, the managing side, and the being, the leading aspects of the business. From a management perspective, when we look at the managing side of the business, the areas that we focus on, or the indicators that we look at, are how we create profit, maintaining or increasing the quality or the quantity of what services we provide in order so that we can capture greater market share, looking at risk, mitigating that risk or managing risk as it is apparent in our business, and setting clear expectations for productivity, because we'll have things such as targets and goals. And when we look at these targets and goals, you may have seen some of this before. It's called SMART goals or SMART objectives. These are specific in nature, very clearly and articulated, so there's absolutely no ambiguity. They're measurable in terms of quantity or quality and make sense. They're also agreed because it's relevant to what they're realistic to part of the role that I'm taking in my business. And they need to be realistic. We can't set people up for failure by setting them goals that cannot, under any circumstances, be achieved. They also have to have some form of time management there, as time constraint there, so that we can say in a period of time we need to achieve X, Y, and Z. Some of you may have heard of this referred to as balanced scorecard. However, the managing aspect of leadership is only half the equation. The management stuff that we focus on is relatively easy because it's tangible. And because it's tangible in nature, we like to focus on it because we can get on quickly with seeing what the results are and seeing what those outcomes are going to be. This is particularly true when we're in a small business or a family business where both time and resources are limited. So, for example, in our home life, we watch out for the welfare of our loved ones. We feed them, we nurture them, love them, discipline them when it's needed, set boundaries and set rules. We nurture our family to be the best that they can be. The question is, do we do the same for our business and the people we are leading? From the leading aspect or perspective, the being side of leadership, our indicators include our purpose, our vision, values, culture, the people, and underlying all of this, in fact, both sides, is communication. Because communication is ultimately important. So what we need to do is find a balance of the leading and the management aspects, attributing equal importance to both sides of the equation, because these are ultimately the factors that will influence our culture and shape our culture and the degree of engagement that we have in our workplace. In the previous session, we looked at the big four, the 4 W's. Where are we headed? Where are we now? What will it take to get there? And what support will be needed along the way? This is because it helps us with our strategy and the implementation of our strategy, which is where we have to create clarity around what it is we need to do and interpret that into the actions that need to be taken on a daily basis to achieve our business goals and our actions. It's all about the direction we want to take. So as you can see from this slide, the role of the leader is this. They start with identifying the strengths that we currently have, and are those strengths the right fit for our business? Then we look at the conditions for success and making sure that we have the right conditions for success so that we can engage our employees. This in turn will lead us to greater customer loyalty because our customers have a high degree of satisfaction with our service offerings. That in turn leads to sustainable growth and real profit, and the long-term aim is sustainability of our business. The goal of the leader is to enable the creation of engaged employees. The trap is we can spend so much time firefighting and getting caught up in the busyness of daily operations and working in the business that we forget to work on the business. And working on the business gets put to the back burner. Because firefighting takes so much energy that we forget we're actually meant to be leading, not just managing. And I can almost hear you saying at this point in time that I have so much to do. What am I supposed to do? How do I get all of this done? There's too much that's very hectic. And yes, it looks very hectic. But the reality is, to be strategic about our leadership, we need to be able to pull back, sit back, and think about, well, okay, there's got to be a starting point. And what is that starting point? Well, again, I'd like to go back to the Big Four and look at what lies behind the Big Four. Because over the years, I've worked with countless people in all sorts of industry sectors and businesses, and I am still amazed today at how difficult it is for people to clearly articulate what it is their business is all about. And the answer is not just in making money. After all, if we were here to make money quickly, we could probably sell drugs. It's a short way to make money quickly. It's not legal. It's certainly not moral. It's certainly not ethical. High degree of chance of getting caught and going to jail, but we could make money. But the point of what I'm trying to make here is that there's always a higher intent around why we have our business in the first place and why we exist as a business in the first place. And these are built on the foundations or pillars of business on which that business is built. And I don't want to understate the importance of these pillars. Neglecting them or dismissing their importance has been the undoing of many a good entrepreneur who's had immense potential to create a highly successful business. The trouble is they've failed to create clarity. So clarity comes first, it comes second, and it comes third. So what we need to do is start with the end in mind. In essence, it's our end game. What is it ultimately that we're trying to achieve here? If I could paint a picture of what the future would be, what would it look like and what would it feel like? There's simple questions to ask yourself. I don't know how many people I've worked with over the years who have struggled with getting their business to the next level, and it's mainly because they've been unable to articulate what their business stands for. It's a really interesting phenomenon. So we can sum it up by the three pillars, which is our purpose, our vision, and values. These are the strength of our business. These are the things that hold our business up, that support everything that we do. Firstly, we need to look at something called our core purpose, and it's our fundamental reason for being in existence beyond making money. If you've ever heard of a book by Collins and Porras, which is called From Good to Great, they endorse this notion that we need to have a greater purpose, a greater need for a business. If we're about making money, we can get in there, make it early and move on. But if we really drill down and look further beyond that superficial layer, there's a reason why we're doing it, a reason why it's important to us. Because our purpose becomes our guiding star on the horizon to inspire our employees and to engage their hearts and minds. And the truth is our core purpose should never really change. A strategy, yes, absolutely. And the way we go about doing our business, yes. But our fundamental reason for being remains steadfast. And that's what great businesses are built on. Because if we can't understand what our core purpose is, how is it that anyone else who's in the business or anyone we deal with going to understand what they're meant to be doing? Because there's no alignment. So some examples of core purposes that I found for you are 3M. And really fundamentally what they're doing, they engage our curiosity and they engage our interest. Very simply, to solve the unsolved problems innovatively by 3M. And I do love Nike, to experience the emotion of competition, winning and crushing the competitors. And I think today, Disney, many, many years after his death, anybody you speak to, whoever goes to Disneyland, says you come away feeling really happy because it's a great place to be. The purpose statement must also be memorable and easy to remember. So don't try to overcomplicate it. When I first started putting my purpose statement together for Food Change Potential, it was around supporting business to realise their change potential and build organisational agility through leadership and management practices at work. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, and I thought I had to think about it very carefully, and I think we all need to think about what we're really trying to achieve. So in essence, it's about embedding leading edge performance management practices. So that's my purpose statement. And for you, it's an idea to think about and ask that question, what is it I'm really here to achieve? What do we really stand for? And what is the purpose of our business? The next pillar we look at is the vision. And this is a stretch goal, a long-term goal. Now, it might be many, many years away. And originally, stretch goals were around 20, 30 years long. It's bold and daring, and it captivates the statement of aspiration of what we would achieve if we could. They have been referred to as BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, and but they're not just an impossible dream. And it must be applicable to the whole business, because this is where we do engage the hearts and minds of our people. An example of this is Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford, in his time, as we know, developed the Model T Ford and did a great job of doing that. And his vision for the future was that every man would be able to afford to drive a Model T Ford. In his time, most people got around by horse and sulky and trains at best. No planes, nothing else. So most people thought he was quite mad. And yet today, when we look at most families, there's usually more than one vehicle in that family. It's quite rare. Anyone who does have a driver's license inevitably ends up owning a car, basically. So his vision did become real. And that's what we mean by an audacious goal. It's that, wow, wouldn't this be absolutely fantastic if we could achieve this? And that's what we're talking about, which is it gets other people outside of our business thinking, oh, this is really quite amazing. Now, vision and our purpose statement. An example I'd like to share with you where I've seen this fall quite flat and with disastrous implications. I'm going to call it the Bill story. And the Bill story is about a couple who started a business of their own. And I was actually mentor to Bill's wife. And she was very frustrated with her husband because they seemed to be treading water and not getting very far with their business. And they really wanted to take it to the next level. So I had a meeting with Bill, and it was a 3-hour meeting over a coffee, about 10 coffees actually, in the end. And what he was telling me, lots of information was coming my way. What I could decipher from it was that his aspirations were really honourable. He had some great ideas, and it would have been fantastic as a business. It really had a very positive intent for the community and for lots of organisations within the community. But his view was, when I mentioned the notion of your purpose, vision and values, he said, oh, I don't have time for that sort of stuff. That's only just that admin stuff, and it's hypothetical. And it was so interesting that he would say that, because the truth was he couldn't actually explain what his purpose was. And he went around and around and around in circles. And then he said the most amazing thing to me. He said, I'm having so much trouble with my business partner because he's sending mixed messages. And I asked him to explain it. And he said, well, he doesn't get the business. He's sending out mixed messages to people and they're the wrong messages. And so I asked him again, well, what's your purpose? And then we had another hour discussion about what the purpose was for the business. And it was really interesting because when I went into, I was invited to go and have a look at how his business worked. And yes, I was very impressed with it. But when I asked that simple question of people who are working in the business, what's the purpose of your business? None of them could articulate it in the same way, and none of them could articulate it clearly to me. And it was so interesting that they had some kind of a visionary idea about what they'd like to achieve, but they couldn't articulate what the business was. The sad part was that when Bill was seeking venture capital to expand his business to the next level, he failed because he couldn't explain what his purpose, his vision, and his values were. Fundamentally, they are our brand. That's who our business is. That's what we stand for and what our business stands for. So that's why I'm saying to you, it's really important not to underestimate the value and the importance of these pillars of our success. So moving on to back to my vision, I wanted to create a reality where performance management is embraced and becomes a fundamental part of the way we all do business. And for me, that's quite audacious because working with businesses, I don't work with Bill, for example, but those types of businesses, the struggle is getting them to realise it's the simple things that can derail our business and take us off track. We're not establishing the pillars for success here. We need to be thinking about all the conditions for success, not just about just making money. So not all your vision statements have to be audacious, but there's got to be some sort of aspiration to them. The third pillar we're looking at are our values. These are our guiding principles. It's the way in which we do our business or conduct our business, and the individuals within it need to adhere to these. It's used to determine our behaviours, our actions, and the way we make decisions. And values are not tangible, but they are easily demonstrated by the way we walk the walk and the way we talk the talk. This is the accepted way of doing things around here, and our core values are not negotiable. I could spend an entire session on what values mean because I've seen so many of them in organisations, and I've seen them so poorly done, which is quite sad because they're only there as a platitude, not as something that is part of the foundation of who we are. So when we're looking at these particular values, so basically we can hang our hat on them. We need to bring them alive. We need to be actually acting this way on a daily basis, bringing this to reality and seeing it in our people. And when we do see it, acknowledge it. And when we see that they aren't living these values, then we should also acknowledge that and have that conversation. Because really, if we aren't able to live these values and make them a part of what we do on a daily basis, it means there's some kind of misalignment. And if people aren't aligned with what our values are, the question is, should they still be part of our business? Because that's reflected very much in the culture of our business. The way people act says a lot about who we are and what we stand for. So let's put it all together. When we think of a structure, we've got a very strong platform. And the platform that we're basing, or the cornerstone of our business, is our culture, because it ultimately impacts the success of our business. Our purpose, vision, and values explain who we are, what we aim to achieve, and what we stand for. It's the strength behind our business because they support everything that we do in the business. And success relies heavily on having the right foundations in place. Now, all of this leads us back to creating the conditions for success and the outcomes that we're striving to achieve. But remembering that we need to get that right balance between, and a nice equal balance between the leading and the managing of our business. Because this all leads to the culture, and the culture starts with us. In essence, we are the leader in our business, and what we do, our people mimic with us. So we need to do a health check on our culture as well. If I go back to the earlier reference I made about the importance of looking after our health, well, then the same applies to our culture, because with poor health, there are a lot more costs involved. There's a lot of doctors involved, there's time off work, parental care if it involves our children, sick leave if it's us, and in some cases, hospitals and surgeries, tests, medicines, and ongoing treatment. Well, the same applies to our business. We need to have a health check for our business. And the areas that we're going to look at today include trust, conflict, having open and honest, frank discussions and communications, commitment, which is around taking ownership and having buy-in from the people that work with us, clearer expectations around the behaviours and the set of expectations that we have for those behaviours, taking accountability for our actions and the actions for the outputs that we achieve, and also having a focus on the right result. The key one here is trust. It's our baseline. It's critical for the culture of our business and for everything else that starts from the baseline of trust. If we don't have trust, we don't have a healthy business and we don't have a healthy business environment. Trust doesn't just happen. As a leader, it actually has to start with us. We need to demonstrate authenticity to show we can be trusted, and in turn that we are trusting of others. Being prepared to share personal insights about who you are, we call this self-disclosure, shows that we're vulnerable and that we're real. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for real and relatable leaders to work with. We create trust by admitting when mistakes are made and not hiding them, or making excuses. Everyone's fallible. Leaders are fallible. We all are. We can make mistakes. If we call that early and we make it honest that we have made a mistake, then our people admit that, and they're more inclined to admit that they've made a mistake too. We also need to provide feedback, but it needs to be honest and it needs to be frank and it needs to be in a very timely manner. We're going to be doing more around this type of feedback in future webinars. The other thing is about helping others when you see it is needed, not when it's asked for, by stepping in and saying, can I help you? The other part of this, though, is that we also need to accept help when it's offered, because by rejecting help when it's being offered, it actually offends people and it makes them think, well, don't you trust me? Don't you want me to help you? So that's another important aspect there. Also, not jumping to conclusions without all of the facts. We need to check all sides of the story. We need to make sure we've got all the facts before we start having any sort of discussion, not just jumping to those conclusions and perhaps starting rumours, lies, innuendos, etc. We need to make sure we do have the facts and that everything makes sense. And being proud and recognising where our colleagues have skills that we could tap into and learn from. I think a big misnomer in organisations is that the leader must have all the answers. That's absolutely not true. But a leader needs to know how to find those answers. And that's why we have people working with us. So we need to be proud of them. We need to show that we appreciate their contribution and that they are valuable to our business. Also, we need to let go of past misadventures or wrongdoing or grudges. So by letting that go and not dredging it up all the time, that's going to reassure people that you trust them again and that we are trustworthy. The other one is creating a safe environment for people to be able to speak their mind. If you are the type of leader that people balk at speaking to, it's telling you something about the fact that they're not quite trusting that this isn't going to damage them long term by speaking to you. So this is another area we need to pay great attention to. And also valuing the team as a whole and using that word team, giving them public press when they deserve it, making it obvious that you appreciate everything that they do for you. These are all areas for building trust. At this time too, if you have your healthy checklist handy, you might see that I've put some behaviours in that checklist around what it looks like when trust is missing. Now, if you tick any of these boxes, or because you've seen these happening, it tells you that perhaps there's something endemic in the business that needs to be addressed. Again, we're going to look at these further down the track, but today what I want to do is to just go through the checklist and show you the indicators of what it looks like when it's working, and then how you as a leader can start the process of putting these into action. The next area in our business health is around conflict. When we talk about conflict, we're talking about open and honest discussions, hearty discussions where everybody's encouraged to speak up and disagree if they disagree. that it's actually okay to disagree and that it won't be a career-limiting move, that we value some form of conflict in our business because some form of conflict is healthy. And now I'm not talking about open warfare here. It's about making sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak what's on their mind. We can do this by encouraging empathy and understanding. And it's not that we want to sympathise, it's not that we have to agree with what everybody is saying, it's that we acknowledge that what they have said is how they're feeling or that's their point of view. Empathy is a completely different thing. It's about putting the shoe on the other foot. What would it feel like if I was in that person's shoes? So we need to be able to listen, to be able to create empathy and that understanding that, yes, their concerns are real for them. They might not be real for me, but they might be very, very real for them. And each staff needs to be able to understand the importance of having that empathy. We also need to create honesty where we don't beat around the bush and just avoid saying what needs to be said. Honesty is important so that we are honest with ourselves, but honest with each other as well, because then it will be reciprocated. If we aren't honest with ourselves first, no one will ever be honest with you. The next factor is about feedback. That's that safe environment, about having a culture where we can speak what's on our mind and be heard. A classic example here where you've got conflict is if you're in a staff meeting and somebody's not saying anything, that means they're not agreeing. I know we usually take silence, and it's often, you hear this all the time. I take your silence as that you agree with me. And then people march on relentlessly forward and go on to the next topic or whatever they need to. It's actually the reverse. When somebody's not speaking up, it means they're probably not agreeing with you and they're not game enough to say it. So we need to create that environment where people are willing to speak up and say what's on their mind. And we do that by listening. Again, we're going to talk about conflict in future webinars, but I really need to make that point now, because if you recognise that immediately in your business, that people don't speak up their mind, what's the reason behind it? What have we got to do as a leader to make sure that it's okay for them to speak up without fear of doing so, particularly in meetings and in discussions that we have? The other thing is to call conflict as it happens. For roughly 50% of the world, we don't like conflict. Conflict is something to be avoided. It could damage relationships. It could damage my reputation. It might have an impact on my career. It might have an impact on our business, whatever the reason. The truth is, the other 50% of the world are the ones who are more healthy. They're the ones who call conflict as it happens. And by that, I mean, it's just a part of life. We are going to be confronted with conflicting views, conflicting ideas, conflicting opinions. That's just part of life, and it makes up the richness of our life. So by avoiding conflict, what we're doing is we're saying, I don't trust the situation to be able to bring this conflict up. I'm also hoping like crazy that it'll just go away and you'll sort it out on your own. Or no, not here, not where I'm involved. I don't want to be a part of this. That's not healthy, because ultimately what happens is that conflict will fester, and it will fester in very dysfunctional behaviours, and eventually it will come back to bite you. It's one of the greatest reasons why there's dissonance between members in an organisation, because there's this unsaid, unexpressed conflict that's just bubbling away below the surface, and eventually it will erupt. So a big lesson for anybody who's on the 50% of the side of the world that don't like conflict, it's not that it's an unhealthy thing, it's actually healthy for you to have conflict at work. It makes us listen more to different opinions and different ideas. The next one is around commitment. And we need to think about commitment as people generally avoid being committed to a business when there's a fear that they're going to fail. And that failure might be resting in all sorts of different reasons. that we don't know about. Maybe it's not clear. A leader needs to remove any ambiguity by creating very clear expectations around what's expected of us, both in our outcomes, in our actions, and in our behaviours. We need to gain buy-in if we want to succeed and get those successful conditions rolling. We create buy-in by allowing them to take ownership of their role, ensuring that they have the necessary accountability and authority to act. This is empowering people. That's what it means, to have a genuine chance to contribute to the business. So we can't set somebody up, and it's happened to me in many years ago, about 30 years ago. I was in a role, a very responsible role, and I was set up with lots and lots of accountability for actions, but I had absolutely no authority to act on those actions. And now that was setting me up for failure. And it was a lesson I learned the hard way, that if you're ever going to be empowering your people and wanting to get the best out of them and get them 100% committed to purpose, the vision and values of your business, then we need to give them the right accountability and the right authority to do so, or the appropriate authority to do so. Look, if failure happens, the other thing we need to remember is, because failure will happen along the way, we don't play the blame game. The lesson here is to learn that it's actually okay to fail. What have we learned from this failure? What can we do differently next time? How can we make sure we don't go down that path again? And what do you need from me to help you to make sure that we don't fail the next time that we're going down uncharted waters or a new area for you that you're working in? The other thing is that research shows that one of the most motivating factors for individuals in any organisation, which makes them commit not just to the business but to their leader, is the opportunity to have meaningful contribution to the business. Now, whether that's their ideas, or whether it's the way that they a system they've developed or a procedure that they follow, whatever it might be, people like to know that they can contribute and that their contributes are going to be listened to and acted on where possible. Now, not all contributions are going to be enacted because they don't fit our business. But what we need to do is listen and have that discussion with our people, because if they feel that they're being engaged in this conversation and that you're taking their contribution seriously and really listening to them, this is where we get our 100% commitment or our engagement. So it's an interesting one, this commitment piece. We also need to know or show our appreciation for a job well done, both individually and within a team, because most of the time when we get our outcomes, yes, it can be sometimes just one person, but there's always somebody else involved, whether they're not at the coalface, whether they're the support person in the background just making this happen. We need to appreciate that they are contributing to the results that we're achieving. This again will lead us to need to greater commitment from our people. The next one is around our clear expectations. Again, these reflect very clear alignment with our values. This is around the rules of engagement, and whether we have alignment about those clear expectations and what we need to be doing in our business. The behaviours definitely reflect the values that we hold, but it's us as the leader that needs to model this, because we're the role model. And much like the parent-child relationship, our staff are scrutinising us constantly to see if we are having any inconsistencies in our behaviour. So we need to be very consistent in what we do. And if we are telling someone to do something one way, we need to do it that way as well. There's not one rule for us and one rule for them. It's a rule for all, and we all need to adhere to that. And we've created a state of dissonance when we do say that one thing but do another. They're going, well, hang on a minute. You're allowed to get away with it. Why can't I get away with it? Those inconsistent and unacceptable behaviours erode trust And we end up losing the very people that we want to keep in our business because it's very divisive in nature. And those behaviours, if they're unacceptable, they provide a reason for not letting go of old issues. So I hope you're starting to see that a lot of these aspects on the health check are interrelated. Because if we don't have our clear expectations, we can't move forward. The next thing on our checklist is our accountability. And I've mentioned accountability just a moment ago. And as a leader, we hold ourselves ultimately accountable for our actions and the results that we achieve and produce. And it's us that we hold accountable. Yes, we hold our people accountable too, but we need to be starting with us first. The same applies with our people. If we don't take accountability, then the standards drop. And if we create a culture of blame and shame, the standards drop. So lack of accountability breeds mediocrity, and this results in missing deadlines, deliverables not being achieved. It puts undue pressure on other people trying to prop up those people who aren't taking accountability for their actions, and it breeds lots and lots of resentment. Again, dysfunctional behaviours, especially when there's differences, and they're quite openly obvious, differences in expectations around performance from individual to individual. So that consistency, again, is very, very important, particularly if we don't address those inconsistencies. It can put people offside very, very quickly. So we measure it very much by putting boundaries in place and rules, having rules, processes, procedures and regulations, making sure we've got those SMART objectives and goals in place. Keeping an eye on those behaviours by having regular reviews on performance. And also being responsible, allowing people to be responsible for their own personal and professional development. And lastly, we're going to look at the results and the importance of those results. Because when we focus on results, it's very important to rise above individual egos that play a part in certain results being achieved. It's more around how, as a team, we gain those results, because I might be a silent partner, but I'm a very strong silent partner as part of the results that we're achieving. You give accolades, high accolades to the figurehead or the most outspoken person, and the people behind the scenes, again, feel that there's resentment and they don't feel as though they're really contributing to their business. So when I'm talking about results, it's about sharing information and making sure that all of us can perform, because all the relevant necessary information has been shared at all levels in the organisation. And we share not just our successes, but we also have to share our failures as well, so that we can show that humility, again, that we're being real. We also need to understand what our key priorities are, and not by telling people once or twice, but by asking them what they think those key priorities are. That's how we get the results, because that reduces ambiguity. And it also makes people realise that they have to verbalise now what their understanding of our key result areas are going to be. And we need to review those success factors by conducting regular feedback sessions with our people and reviews about how we're tracking. So these are the conditions underlying our conditions for success. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But in reality, if we conduct our health check, that'll give us a clear indication of where we're standing and how we are tracking at any point in time. What I wanted to do was to say to you, look, the next steps, or what do I take from this? How do I tie all of this together? As a leader, we've got a lot of pressure, and today you've looked at the idea that we've got our 3 pillars, our purpose, vision and values, that rests on the culture that we're developing in our organisation. And our success factors are the umbrella over the top. To get a really strong organisation, as a leader, we need to start looking at each aspect in the organisation. How are we tracking? Where are we? And what do I need to do as a leader? So some of the tips that I'd just like to give you from a personal basis is around being a leader is not always easy, and we're not always going to get it right. So don't expect yourself to be perfect all the time. That's unrealistic. We are human, and it's tough sometimes being human. So be prepared to fail. It's not actually a sign of weakness, particularly if we're learning from what our failures have been. It actually becomes then a very big sign of strength because you're showing that authentic leadership. And you'll hear this term quite a bit in my summary. So start with the easy stuff first, because that'll give you confidence, and be persistent. Keep at it. Keep learning along the way, because that helps you grow and develop your resilience. Back yourself and believe in yourself. Too many people I coach don't believe that they've got that capability. The truth is you do. It's easy to knock ourselves down. We think there are other people who are ready to knock us down. The truth is, if we can't believe in ourselves, nobody else will believe in us. So we need to back ourselves and always, always be kind to yourself. It's a hard world. People are ready to kick you when you're down. So we need to be kind to ourselves first. Remember, if it's worth doing, keep at it, and don't forget to celebrate along the way. Even your very, very small successes, it's important to celebrate them along the way. It gives us a sense of achievement, it gives our people a sense of achievement and the confidence to do more and to take on more. And take pride in your accomplishments and pride in your team's accomplishments. Give yourself good press and give your people good press as well. One thing about this using your judgment, experience and wisdom to make tough decisions is that sometimes or frequently as a leader, and I've mentioned this before, it can be very lonely being at the top. So my recommendation is, if you don't have one, get yourself a mentor. In fact, you might need more than one mentor. And I always recommend to people in leadership positions, think about what you want to get from being mentored. A mentor is different to a coach. A coach will bring it out of you. A coach will realize you've got the answers. A mentor is around, particularly important for leaders, that unknown territory, that area that you would like to be better in. But you need to conduct your own checklist on yourself. What is it I'm missing from today's materials and what we've looked at? What is it that I don't think I'm strong in? What areas should I be focusing on? And then approach a mentor. They don't have to be in your business. They might be in your community. They might be in an association you are aware of. They might be somebody you met years ago. It doesn't matter where they come from, but you have a mentor for a specific purpose. And when you engage with a mentor, it's around asking them to be your mentor because you want to be better at blah, 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 whatever it is. It might be creating clarity in my organisation. If you can't articulate clearly to your mentor what you want them to help you with, they won't know where to start. And so they won't give you the best outcome that they could possibly give you. You will tend to find a lot of people balk at the idea of taking a mentor because, oh, gee, how could I ask somebody their business? You'll be they're busy in their business. And you'll be surprised how many people are absolutely flattered when they're asked to be a mentor because it's their way of giving back. And quite often you'll find that they had mentors when they were learning their leadership skills as well. So I can't emphasise enough about making sure that you do get yourself a mentor or mentors to help you through this journey of leadership. Another thing is to realise that you're not going to be able to make everybody happy all the time. That's just the reality of life, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions at times that are not going to please people. But a good leader is firm, fair, consistent and persistent. So if you're making rational decisions made on good inputs and data and good reasons, then stick to it and again, back yourself. We also need to ask ourselves, and a good question for you today, do I have a clear vision of where I want to take this business? Do I understand the fundamental purpose of this business? And are our values relevant? Are they still relevant? Are they still what we should be gauging ourselves on and using as a mark for all of our behaviours? So have I got those in place? And then the next big part to that is, can I articulate that very clearly in simple terms so that everyone in the organisation can understand it. And it's about communication, communication, and communication. And keep communicating that message to your people on a regular basis. It can be emails, it can be face-to-face, it can be in brochures, it can be in articles, it can be in meetings at any time, it can be when you're having a cup of coffee with them. It doesn't matter. We need to keep this message out there so that it becomes ingrained as part of our business DNA. The best way to understand if they've got it is to ask them, not a leading question, just ask them. Is what is your understanding of our values? How do we live our values? What is our purpose? What's the vision for the company? You'll be very interested if you went around today without taking any of this information first to your people and ask those questions. There's a good health check for you, and you may be surprised by some of the answers that you get. Some might be absolutely fantastic, some might mortify you. I keep talking about this authentic leadership and that we need to be real with ourselves and with others. That's what authentic leadership is all about. Being genuine, having that moral courage to have the tough conversations when you need to have them, having that inner strength to stand firm on your principles, no matter what the situation, making sure that the values that you have are reflected in your actions on a daily basis, and that you're leading those values, and that the people, you're aligned with those values, and that the business is aligned with those values. A big one for all of you, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to accept help if it's offered. You don't have to do this on your own, and it shouldn't be a lonely journey. And I do see a lot of people having a lonely leadership journey because they think they need to do it on their own. Remember, we are the role model. We're under constant scrutiny from our people. So we need to talk the talk and we need to walk the walk, because your people are looking for you for stability, for strength, and so you must be the kind of person you want your people to be. In saying that, set some personal boundaries. Sometimes when you make those decisions that are not popular, people will try to come back to you from a personal basis. So we need to make that line between being authentic and self-disclosure to allowing too much disclosure where people want to take advantage of you. It is okay to show your emotions, absolutely okay to show your emotions. This is part of your moral courage, because being human is okay. Another thing to remember for your business is remember to ask, are you okay? And that happens particularly when we see signs that not all is going well. But you don't just ask, are you okay? You need to stop and be ready to listen. Really, leadership can be incredibly rewarding if we allow it to be rewarding. Let's make our own rules. Let's make sure that we've got our purpose, vision, and values, our culture, and which all are all part of our conditions for success. If we get those right, we'll have a very, very strong culture. We'll have a very resilient culture, and we'll have a business that can be successful. That's about it for today's session. I think quickly, if anybody has any questions for me, I've got a couple of minutes to take those. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you at the end of June for our next section, which is called Leading in the Moment, where we will start looking closely at more leadership styles and behaviours that are important for our success. But thank you for tuning in. I haven't seen any questions coming up at this point in time. Great working with you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.